We had an extensive debate on a number of amendments to this bill yesterday. And there was a couple of themes that emerged from those who are advocating in support of this legislation that I want to address. You know, actually, in one of the other bills, the awful South Carolina massacre from 2015 was referenced. One of the most amazing things that happened after that terrible, evil, wicked act by a young person, not much older than the people we're talking about here, but an adult, was that the surviving members of this church showed up at the courtroom and told this young man that they forgave him and that they would pray for him. It shows the power of forgiveness and the power of redemption in our society, and it is something that we should applaud and encourage. And as my colleague from Harford County mentioned, our desire for redemption and seeing redemption in others is something that we should encourage and support, and can sometimes lead to someone receiving a second chance or a third chance. But that forgiveness by those wonderful people in South Carolina did not absolve the need for justice for the killer. It did not absolve the need for, yes, punishment for the acts that he committed. There are acts that must have permanent consequences. Some acts so heinous that there must be permanent consequences. We as a society have to draw a bright line, and we can debate about where that line is, but we need to draw a bright line as it relates to people who would wantonly disregard human life to a degree like some of the cases that we've heard about, that we read about on the floor yesterday. So the fact that some of the families or some members of families of the victims that we've heard about in some of these cases support this bill, again, I have great respect for the fact that they have forgiveness and they support it. But there are hosts of people who are relatives of victims who abjectly do not. And as I said yesterday, the direct victims of the people sitting in jail that we are referring to, the small number, the very small number, they're all dead. So they can't speak. Second thing we heard about, that I hear about quite frequently, and we've heard in this, I've heard more of this in some of the communications I've received as opposed to on the floor, but it may have been referenced on the floor, was the debate over age, that these folks who were minors at the time of their offense, that what we understand about science now is, and brain development, says that they couldn't know what they were doing, or they didn't completely grasp what they were doing, or they're not fully developed and understanding. And you know, if it was a 13 or 14-year-old, in some cases, perhaps there's an argument there, and actually, quite frankly, that's, I know, considered by the justice system when these kind of cases are tried. But this body, just this session, voted to allow children as young as 12 to consent to mental health treatment without their parents' involvement. Many, many years ago, we made this body and the body across the hall made a decision that children can have an abortion without their parents' consent as minors. There's been a push to allow minors to vote in elections. Not legislation here, I don't believe, but a lot of our municipalities allow minors as young as 16 and 15 to vote in elections. And actually, in a couple of our counties, I believe, I know at least one of our counties, even middle school children can vote for an elected school board member to go vote in the school board. So let's not say for a minute here that because someone is 17 and a half that we can't treat them like they're different than perhaps they're 11 or 12. When you have been found competent to stand trial for a triple murder, rape and murder at 17 or 17 and a half, yes, you are still a minor, but we can't have it both ways. We can't say that a 12-year-old is young enough to consent to mental health treatment without their parents, but then say, but we can't put a 17-and-a-half-year-old in jail for life without parole when they've murdered 3 people or 4 people in cold blood in a premeditated fashion. So, Mr. President, I would strongly urge us to vote no on this bill. I understand the dynamics of this chamber. I understand the dynamics externally, the pressures that come in. But what we do, there's nobody in this chamber on the Republican side of the aisle that has been any more supportive of criminal justice reform, justice reinvestment. Others have, but I've been right there. This is not about that. This is a societal choice to draw a bright line between good and evil. So I would urge the body to vote red on this bill.